morning, teachers. My name is Ted, and I am the marriage pastor. And if you're here today in person or you're joining us online, we're so glad that you're here. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about marriage. But if you're not married, don't worry about it, because most of everything that we're going to say has to do with relationships just as well. And Guy Strickland, he queued us up a couple of weeks ago and talked about doing maintenance in his marriage. And he and Christina have been married for decades. And he said, hey, we still need a little bit of marriage support, a little bit of marriage care. And so we're going to kind of take that ball and run with it today as we talk about, how difficult it is to have relationships, to have marriage, and the importance of maintaining that and the importance of God in that. And so I'm going to let my lovely life.
I am his
There's
life.
some truth in that.
You guys
There's
heard
some
it.
truth in that. That's a
Yes.
Freudian slip.
Yes. All right. My name's Mary, and I am so glad that you guys are here today. Seriously, this is a huge honor to be able to share just what God has done in our relationship. So I'm going to introduce us with a picture that you guys will really appreciate. So this is Ted and I when we started dating in 1996. Okay.
Orthodontistry is very important in my life. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr.
So
Keller.
also the white eyeliner and the zits on the face. I just want to point that out. So Ted and I have gone from zits and braces to wrinkle and gray hair.
And
shout out to that. Yeah.
My guys on the front line
I
are
wasn't gonna mention
backing
that.
up a little bit. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So I was so attracted to Ted despite what these pictures show.
Wow.
I mean, I was speaking on both of us.
Okay.
Speaking for both of us. Really. Ted, look at that shirt. He could be wearing that today. He is so steady.
You picked that out, by the way.
I probably did, yeah. But he is so steady. And literally, I think in that picture, you had already started investing in mutual funds. And as you can see, on my side, I was investing in white eyeliner and overalls.
Yes.
So we were complete opposites.
But we were super attracted to each other.
We were, yes. Yeah. I was born at Bay Medical.
Yes, and I was born at Gulf Coast State Hospital.
Yes,
yeah.
I was a graduate of Bay High Tornadoes. Yeah.
Ooh, oh, yikes. And I went to the Mosley High School. Any Dolphins in the house?
Oh, come on.
My people.
All right. Yeah. So it doesn't stop there. Those are obvious, but our personalities and our temperaments were completely opposite.
Yeah, and so I want to show you guys, this is our Myers-Briggs. If you're familiar with this at all, and if you're not, don't worry about it. But there's only one of two letters that you can be in each of the categories. And so I'm an introvert, intuitive, thinking, and judging, and Mary is an extrovert, sensing, feeling, and perceiving. There's only two letters that you can be in either of these categories. And we are the exact opposite in each of these categories.
Yeah. And again, let's go to the temperaments. So in the temperaments, there are 4 temperaments, okay? I am if we could show that one. Yeah, there we go. All right, I am yellow. You see me over here? I'm sanguine. My needs are approval, acceptance, attention, and affection. Let's go to the complete opposite, which is melancholy. That is what Ted is. His main needs are safety, sensitivity, space, and silence. I want you to look at space and silence and contrast that with attention. Can you see where we're going with this? Yeah, absolutely.
So these two folks move into 800 square feet together, right? And we have a photo of our wedding day. On that wedding day, I thought that all the work had been done. I had spun up the relational flywheel, and there was enough love in that relational flywheel that it was going to just perpetually be enough for forever, and I would never have to do any more work or shopping or anything else. I had been to Gayfers or Dillard's or whatever version of it. I'd gone there for the last time, right? But I was definitely wrong.
Definitely wrong.
Yeah. And so these two people move into 800 square feet together. And today, kind of the question is, did you want to get married or did you want to be married? And for me, I think I wanted to get married. I was looking forward to that. I thought that that would like solve all of life's issues. I even bought a ring. You know what I mean? It's like the most money I'd ever spent in my whole entire life.
Same one.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I was excited about getting married, but I didn't know that I had thought too much about being married, because I thought I had put all my relational energy into getting married.
Yeah.
And so, as we talk about this, I'm going to pop up a slide. Mary and I have thought about our relationship in four sort of focuses, okay? And I'm going to explain these focuses just really quick, and then we're going to kind of walk through them together. So focus number one in our relationship was outward. I kind of looked at Mary and, you know, I was like, well, she's the cause of these reasons that I'm having a hard time or whatever. And that lasted for about a year.
I did the same.
Yeah. And then so after that, we kind of went inward and sort of thought about, hey, what am I doing inside of our relationship that's not super helpful or, you know, being hurtful? And then we went upward and thought, what does God think about me and how does God intervene in this relationship? And the last part is we kind of looked outward at each other, and through the lens of Christ, we like what we see. And then through the lens of help, we want to be people that help others. And so these are kind of the four phases or four focuses of our marriage that we'll talk about a little bit as we get into it. So why don't you discuss a little bit of that 800 square feet?
That focus one, I mean, we got married and almost immediately, it's weird. Like everybody likes me unless I share a bank account with them. Very bizarre. I don't understand. I actually did not understand it back then, but now I completely get it.
Yeah.
I am a mess. So anyway, we got married, and immediately these problems started. Ted has been so graceful when he talks about this, but my fun, spontaneous nature, translation to now I'm married and I am completely irresponsible, not dependable, and I really have a hard time adulting. Anybody else understand that? Yeah. So anyway, we start sharing this bank account, and I mean, if you remember, one of his needs is safety. I am not safe.
Yeah.
I am
financially.
Not safe
Sometimes,
financially.
yeah, we've gotten
better. I am better.
Yeah.
I'm recovering. And I didn't have eyes on it. And so when I would spend something that I'm like, oh, he's going to be so excited about this throw pillow.
Yeah.
And he wasn't? What in the world? What in the world? Has anybody ever gotten divorced over throw pillows or come close?
Right.
I think I have.
And so this started a phase between the two of us, or at least on my end. And I didn't have language for this when this started. But one of the ways that couples sort of start drifting is we kind of start building a wall. Let's say when we get married, there's sort of a window to our soul, and we're soul to soul, and we can see each other, and that's wonderful. Well, then as things go along, if you're not careful, you'll start kind of building a wall between the two of you, and instead of facing this way, we'll start facing this way. And one of the best ways to talk about this is through the Four Horsemen. This is an idea written by a guy named John Gottman. He's a famous relationship researcher. And again, if you're not married, all of these four horsemen relate to just personal relationships. And so, I mean, the bottom line is being in a relationship is hard. But in the first little bit of our relationship, within the first year, these things started to kind of surface. And these are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. The first one is criticism. So she was a little free with the money, and we didn't have a lot of it. And so I might come home and just be a little critical about that, Hey, what are we doing with all the money? Oh gosh, I guess we needed more ketchup, or whatever. So I kind of start up these little digs and these little things. And then a relative of criticism is defensiveness, okay? And so defensiveness comes in two forms, or two main forms. Form number one is to blame shift. So I would say, hey, you bought too much ketchup, and you would say,
what are you talking about? We always use ketchup. We can use 2 of the Sam's Club bottles for the 2 of us.
And I bought 2 last week.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, right.
Use it.
So that's blame shifting. And then the other one, the second form of defensiveness is to play the innocent victim, okay? So I say, hey, you bought too much ketchup.
I can't I can never do anything right.
Right.
Like, what is wrong with you? It's just ketchup. It doesn't
Yes.
even expire, does it?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And so this type of behavior would go on, and then eventually we get to stonewalling, where stonewalling is if you're in the same environment, but you're trying not to pay attention to each other. So she's talking, but I'm like, like this. And there's some eye rolling and sneering and things that happen in this. And then this last one, and I put an asterisk by it, this one's the most damaging one. This one's called contempt. And contempt is when you kind of believe that you are on a little bit different of a plane than your mate or than your spouse. And it comes from a negative habit of mind of coming into your environment and picking out all the negative things that are happening. And this is what I would do. I would come home and I would see things out of order, and then I'd look at our bank account and that was out of order. And I begin to kind of build this wall in between she and I. And this contempt sort of set in. And this is the number one indicator, according to the Gottmans, of basically divorce, is when couples get into this place where you come home and instead of seeing a daughter of God, I just see this person that spent too much money and bought too much ketchup. And that's contempt.
Yeah, so if you guys are not familiar with contempt, I'm going to show you contempt. Okay?
Yes.
So let's say, this is all hypothetical, it's never happened in our relationship. But let's say that Ted says something that I don't really like, but I'm just so respectful, so I'm not going to interrupt him. So I'm going to do this instead. Okay? If you are recognizing that face in me because you've seen it somewhere, you probably know someone with contempt. Okay, here's another one that's a little more sophisticated, okay? Again, let's say Ted says something that I don't agree with, and I make a face that's like this. Bless your heart. That is also a sign of contempt.
Right.
All right. Now that we're all familiar with it, raise your hand if you identify with contempt.
Yeah.
If you are online, please put in there, yes, I identify with contempt.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but in all seriousness, what's it like to be on the other side of a contemptuous spouse?
Well,
especially with the relational need of acceptance and approval and affection. And
So honestly, I really just felt like a failure. I loved Ted, and I knew that he loved me, but I also knew that he didn't like me. And you guys probably understand what I mean by that. And so I was used to winning everybody over, and I couldn't win him over. And he's lovable. So I felt broken. I felt like I started believing that something was really just wrong with me. I might be unlovable.
So focus one is a little bit about just looking at your mate and pointing those fingers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when we did that, we didn't like what we saw.
Yeah.
We didn't like what we saw. We were so focused on our own needs that when the other person wasn't meeting those needs, we just kind of recoiled, right, and started building that wall. But God. All right. So this kind of brings us into focus 2, and this was inward. In this stage of our relationship, we realized that who we weren't who we thought we were. Okay. We started realizing, gosh, I'm not all that in a bag of chips either, and I think I need a lot of grace. And if I need a lot of grace, then Ted probably needs a lot of grace too. So this kind of came to us via community. So last week when Lee Baker spoke, he talked about a community group that he was in with us, and he mentioned it was life-changing. Ditto. It was life-changing for us too. So we started really probably a year into our marriage, we started this small group with them. And I'm so thankful. It was a time where we didn't have any children, and so we had a lot of time on our hands. And so we would hang out. We would go to lunch after church. Can you guys imagine that? Like being young, no children,
it was fun.
And just being able to hang out with like 6 couples whenever you wanted. It was weird. I can't even imagine what that was like now because we have 4. But anyway. So we would go hang out after church. We would go like midweek and like just have dinner. We would have these movie nights. Ted and Lee were both on staff at Northstar, so if they had like an overnight retreat, Lee and Jacqueline would literally, Jacqueline and I would literally have like girls' night where we would watch rom-coms and veg out on popcorn and M&Ms or something and spend the night at each other's houses. I mean, it was really fun. So the cool thing about this is that you can't be in close proximity with someone without them seeing the real you. And she and Lee both saw the real us. And they lovingly told us the truth about what they were seeing. And I remember Jacqueline said, "Hey, I just noticed that maybe Ted's not as nice to you as maybe he should be in public. That's kind of weird." Her specific, metaphor was, it's kind of like we should be a billboard for our spouse, and Ted is not really presenting you as gracefully or as great as he should be.
Yeah. And so we've practiced this a whole bunch, and I'll be honest, I still don't like that story. Not because it's a wonderful story, but I hate who I was. I hate who I hate how I was behaving in front of our peers, and I hate some of the things that I said, even though maybe they were funny at the time. I kind of recoil when I think about that. And so I remember Mary and I lived in this little house on Frankfurt Avenue, and we're lying in bed one night, and she says, "Hey, some of the girls from community group have kind of noticed that you make little snarky remarks at me, and you say things that aren't kind." And I just remember lying there and thinking, man, my dad didn't raise me to be that person. There's no way on this earth that that's okay. And I realized that I had these contemptuous glasses for her. And whenever I viewed her, a lot of times I would just see these things that I was frustrated with. And this was the first time that someone kind of raised their hand and said, "Hey," and it's showing, like we all kind of see it. And so it helped me to put down these glasses. And so that's your first little call out there, is God uses community to provide accountability, belonging, and care. God uses community to provide accountability, belonging, and care. There's this particular passage of scripture I love. It's Proverbs 27:6. It says, "Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies its kisses." It would have been so easy for Lee and Jacqueline to just be like, "No, you guys are good. It's funny. We love how you guys mix it up at group," or whatever. But they didn't. They had a hard conversation like, "Hey, this is not good. And you guys aren't going in a really positive direction." I remember one time Lee told me, he said, "Hey, when are you going to start loving your spouse with the expectation of nothing in return?" And at the time I thought, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I was like, that's not how relationships work. There's reciprocity, buddy.
Right.
And man, I like truer words may never have been spoken. So,
yeah.
But you have another story kind of on your end.
What was cool is when I shared that with Ted, he was so humble and kind and gentle. He did not explode, and he really started changing how he treated me, which modeled how we were going to do this little dance. And my own story of accountability came in shortly after. So Ted had done something that had ticked me off. I'm sure it was something huge. Probably not. He maybe didn't fluff or chop the pillow or something.
We have too many pillows. It's a lot.
Come on.
It's a lot.
Anyway, so I remember calling a friend, and this friend was like, a stage beyond where I was, right? And she was a mentor to me. And I remember calling her and saying, "Hey, you will never guess what Ted did. He didn't chop the pillow," or whatever. And just completely venting on Ted and throwing him under the bus. And she listened, and we got off the phone, and she immediately called me back. And I know this was hard for her, and it's just not in her personality. But she called me back, and she said, "Hey, I love you enough to tell you this, but I am never going to allow you to talk about your husband the way that you just did again." Whew. Man, I needed to hear that. I needed to hear that. And she was vulnerable enough with me to share those words with me. And I'm so thankful she did, because I've never done it again.
So, right, yes. So focus number one was?
Yeah. So focus number one, again, we're looking outward. We do not like what we see.
Mm-hmm.
Focus number two, we realized, I need some grace. My partner probably needs some grace. And things started to get better. I'm so thankful. And that stage, that a lot of you might identify being in that stage right now, and that's a maintainable stage. We also slipped back into that focus 1. Yep. But focus 2, that was maintainable, but it's not optimal because God always wants abundance for us. And he had it in mind. So,
so stage number 3 is upward, or we mixed up the words. Focus. Focus number 3.
Yeah.
Focus number 3 is upward, and realizing with God how he transformed us, and then we begin to see each other. And so in 2007, Mary and I had been married for 6 years right then. We moved to Dallas, Texas, and we moved out there primarily for me to go to school. And we thought we had kind of patched up some of the things in our relationship, and I think I had kind of taken those contempt glasses off, but they were still sitting there, like I could retract them if I needed them, you know. But we were doing quite a bit better, and we thought, hey, you know, maybe we would like to help others or something like that.
Yeah.
And but what she said is really important. It's not like you go from focus 1 to focus 2 and they're always static. If you don't maintain something, you'll go right back. And the easiest way of thinking about it is like weightlifting or bodybuilding. And if you've ever been really, really, really in shape, it doesn't just stay like that. You know, you have to keep working. You have to maintain it. And so when we went to Dallas, I read this book. And Mary told me something the other day. She says, hey, you know, every time you speak, you mention that book. I said, yes, I know. And I'm just hoping that 5 people will read the same will read the same book. But I read a book by the name of I read a book by the author, Robert McGee, called Search for Significance. And it's actually your QR code on your notes today. But this is just an incredible book. And I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes version of it real quick. Please read the book. It's excellent. There's a student version. You can read it with your kids. It's fantastic. But this little equation down there was something that I just so resonated with. My performance plus others' approval equals my self-worth. Okay, let me put it in social media terms. When you post a really cool picture and everybody likes it, then you're cool, or then you're good, or then you're valuable,
you're worthy,
or then you're influential, or however you want to think of that. And I personally bought into that hook, line, and sinker. That's how I thought. Whenever I do a good job and Mary approves or somebody else approves, then I'm valuable and that I'm worthy. And guess what? I was applying that same thing to her. Well, whenever she does the things that I want her to do, then I'm going to be Mr. Nice Guy, because I don't want to be Mr. Nice Guy if she's doing the wrong things, you know, because that would send the wrong message or something ridiculous like that, right? But God doesn't view us like this. While we were sinners, Christ died for us. He didn't wait for us to get our act together. He didn't wait for us to do exactly what he wanted us to do. While we were sinners, Christ died for us. And that's how God looks at us. He's not waiting on us to get our act together. He loves us no matter what. He loves us in spite of the silly things that we're doing. And this book just revealed that to me in such a powerful way. And then I made the aha moment. Well, if that applies to me, then it probably applies to her too. And this is one of those major things, and we write this in your notes. God uses marriage to disciple us. God uses marriage to disciple us. If you're not married, you can say God uses relationships to disciple us. I was in this relationship with this person, and I learned so much by the dynamics of our relationship, by the proximity. If she and I would have had these little things, I didn't like how she spent money, but we weren't married, I probably would have been like, hey, I don't want to hang out with that person anymore. But due to the proximity, due to this commitment that I had made, it taught me so much. God used marriage in our life to teach us so much about him. And this is one of those vital lessons, is that God loves me no matter what. And I can offer that same love to my spouse.
Yeah, so similar to Ted's revelation, I had one as well, and that occurred with a Bible study that we were going to. Actually, it was a marriage thing that we were going to when we lived in Dallas. It's called Reengage. What I loved about the culture in Dallas, and it's one of the things that Ted and I really try hard to reproduce here, is that that marriage ministry was not for people on the brink of divorce. Mm-hmm. It was for every single person who was married. Mm-hmm. Every single person, whether you're newly married or whether you have launched out several kiddos and you're an empty nester, we believe that you can benefit from marriage ministry. So one of the weeks, homework in that study, we were tasked with writing down every single way that we had undermined our marriage on a sheet of paper. Write it down. And at first I started, this will be easy, blah, 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 too many pillows.
Yeah.
There was a lot. There was a lot that I had done. And God revealed that to me graciously. The next thing we were asked to do was call a friend and ask them, hey, what are some ways that you have seen me undermine my marriage? And I did it, and I got even more. So that paper is now flipped over on the other side, and I'm just writing it down, right? The following, and Ted's doing this too. The following week, we were supposed to come together, sit with each other while you have some time and some space, and confess those things one at a time and ask for forgiveness for those things. And I gotta tell you, it's scary. It was very scary. It was also the closest I have ever felt to him. Because again, that gentleness, that humility, that, I don't know if you remember those needs that I have, and I think most of you have them too, but that need for approval and acceptance, like that, I mean, he just wrapped his arms around me, both of us, and we were just like, yep, of course I forgive you. Of course I forgive you. And so that was a huge deal for me. We finally loved each other the way that Christ loves us. And that was life-changing. Life-changing.
So one of the more challenging passages in Scripture as it relates to marriage is Ephesians chapter 5. And there's some talk of submission in this chapter. And I actually, we're going to talk about that, but we're going to talk about it in a different way and kind of leading out with the male portion of that. But as I experience it, when people approach this verse, and I'll have guys, I'm going to be honest, it's you guys. You'll come to me and you'll say, Ted, my wife's just not submitting, and I'm like, really? This is so weird, whoa, she just won't do it. And I'm like, really? Okay. I wasn't ready to ask Mary to submit to anything when we met, or when I was the way that I was, or when I had this contempt, or whenever I had all this going on. It wasn't until I understand how Christ loves me and how I'm supposed to love her that any of this submission business really makes sense. And so I want to talk about verse 21 in Ephesians chapter 5. It says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. That's a tall order on both of us. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then it says this, for husbands, this means love your wives just as Christ loved the church. So guys, inside of marriage, what we're talking about here is a God that loved us so much that he was willing to sacrifice his life in order that we can have proximity and a relationship to him. He was willing to lay it down. That's love. That's what love looks like. Whenever we got together, I wasn't even willing to submit my preferences, I wasn't even willing to just say, hey, it's okay if you mix the white laundry and the colored laundry. That's okay. I was like, oh, she does it again. I'm upset about laundry. That. I'm upset about that. But I get to a place, if I can love her like Christ loves the church, and if I see her strengths and her abilities and her talents, and my job becomes, how do I move all this stuff out of the way so you can flourish, so you can thrive? There's a Bible verse that talks about walking in all the good works that God's prepared in advance for you to walk in. And that's my goal for her. I'm like, what are those good works? And how do I make a way for you to walk in those good works? Do you see how the submission conversation becomes a little bit different? It's different than she won't submit, to what? Letting you have the remote control, maybe not, right? But if you will lay down your life, if you're willing to push everything out of the way so her good works can flow through, I think it's a different conversation.
Yeah. And so ladies, it starts, this verse starts with a call to wives. Again, I'm going to read it. And furthermore, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. For wives, this means submit to your husband as to the Lord. That was where I was failing. I was not submitting to the Lord. I didn't really know what that looked like. But God gives wisdom if you ask. And so I started asking, what does this look like for me to submit to you? Because if I can't do that for the Lord correctly, how am I going to do that for Ted correctly? And so I started asking in the mornings, okay, God, I'm not going to just go where my dopamine takes me, right? I'm not going to just redecorate a kid's room. Meanwhile, I've got 4 loads of laundry on the couch, hiding the pillows, may I add. So I started to really ask God in the mornings, what is best for my day so that I can meet his needs? What does that look like? And he started giving me some very practical answers. And we started getting this marriage dance down a little bit better. It was great.
So you kind of wrap it up.
Okay, so we had those 3 focuses. Outward, did not like what we saw. Inward, we still didn't like what we saw. It was even worse. Gross. Ew. We started looking upward, and we loved what we saw. And all of a sudden, it transformed our vision so that when we looked at each other again, we started seeing what Christ saw in us. And that was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Not only did it change who we saw in our spouse, it changed who we were able to see for all of our friends, all of our children, our immediate family. Like, it really does help us to see everybody's intrinsic value.
Yeah. So let's just talk about why this matters.
Yeah.
So Mary and I have this, we've really worked and we have this relationship, so that's good for us.
Right.
But why does it matter?
Yeah.
Why does it matter in Bay County? And I'll tell you why. Roughly 40 couples a month in our community file for divorce. Now, some of those divorces don't go through, but 40 couples a month file for divorce. And I just want to talk about the level of pain that's in that, because I'd like to believe that those same 40 couples got married just like she and I did on a happy day, and they maybe had some premarital counseling, and I just think about the pain that's involved in that, not in a judgmental sort of a way, but like, oh my goodness, what are you going through?
They probably don't want a divorce. They want abundance.
Right. And so these 40 couples in our community are looking to dissolve their marriage, and I think about how many neighborhoods are in our community. Let's just say there's 10 really large neighborhoods in our community, and you think 4 couples in everybody's community on a monthly basis is kind of raising their hand and saying, I think we're kind of done here. And then their kids go to different schools, and it rips at the fabric of our community. And so I don't say that in a judgmental sort of a way at all. I just say that in a painful way. I think part of Mary and I squaring things off with each other, God had a vision to say, hey, I would like for you guys to try to help other couples not go through this pain. And God gave us a vision for that. And so one of the things that we have done is to start a marriage initiative in Bay County. It's called the Bay County Marriage and Family Initiative.
It's very creative.
Very creative name. And what's really cool is we have partnered with plenty of other churches, roughly 20 of us, 20 different churches.
20 different churches.
Yeah, we get together.
20 different churches are working together.
Yeah.
Can we get, yay, that's a huge deal.
Yeah. And so our goal is to raise capacity, or Mary and I, our goal is to raise capacity for marriage ministry in our community, so that these 40 couples, when they go to the clerk of courts, they're like, okay, well, there's also a ton of things that you could do. There's accountability through community. There's God. Like, there's tons of things that you could do, because I think a lot of times for those 40 couples, they just kind of feel like things are hopeless.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the things that we've done as a community to kind of help say, hey, 40 couples, you don't have to do this. There's options out there for you.
Absolutely. Tons of options. So, I'm going to use a metaphor here. When people, 100 years ago, you would have a toothache and you would then go to the dentist type situation. And you would go, and it was painful, and we didn't have the same technology, and there were just horror stories of people being bound down, getting their tooth ripped out, right?
Wow.
I know.
Bound.
Bound down. Anyway. All All right. What we realized is that if you will brush your teeth and floss.
I disagree with the floss part.
That is a conspiracy theory.
The string industry is loving this conversation.
No. If you will brush your teeth and floss at home, as well as go to the dentist 2 times a year, guess what? Those infections really don't happen anymore. So it's not as painful. And so that's kind of this campaign that we're launching through the Bay County Marriage and Family Initiative, which is every couple, every year, 8 hours of marriage relationship education. And that could look like a small group that's focused on marriage. That could look like a marriage retreat. That could also look like counseling. But we believe that every couple, every year, 8 hours of marriage.
I think Mary and I, we actually argued about this yesterday in our living room.
No, we did.
Yeah, and we talked about the... I said, I think guys understand maintenance, you know? You don't go and buy a car and then just run it till the wheel. No, you change the oil every 3,000 miles and you care for it and you wash it and you do all these things.
And I said, but you don't maintain your baby. You take care of your baby.
Right. So semantics, you know, sometimes I think when she left the house, I maintained the kids. But anywho... Your marriage needs care or maintenance, whichever way you like to slice it. Yeah. And if you don't care for your marriage or your relationships, for that matter, they're going to atrophy and fall apart. And so we're trying to just normalize this idea. Hey, it's okay. All couples need help.
Because we know this because that is what has happened with us.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so you are going to introduce our small group leaders.
Yeah, so if I could have our small group leaders.
Oh, your mic's not working? Oh, this is, so I'm,
yeah,
oh, wow, all right, nice. This is fun. One of the things that we've done at Northstar over the last several years is we've tried to assemble a group of people that really care about your marriage and care about your relationships. And what I think is really, really, really fun and cool, this semester we started something kind of fun and new for blended families. And so these are our fun couples, Seth and Tina, yeah, absolutely. And the Reinhardts, Kyle and Hannah. And Mary and I actually participated in the group this spring, and we had such a good time. I would tell you, having a blended family provides such context, and to watch them kind of communicate about things that are not necessarily on our radar was so much fun. And so if you are a part of a blended family and you need some help and resources, this is your group, and we're going to be starting a group in the fall. And so we'd love to have you join us, and that's going to be fantastic and awesome. And this is Brian and Doreen, and this is crazy. Whenever Mary and I started coming to Northstar, we all had small kids, and now they're like leaving the nest, you know. And so Brian and Doreen have a small group on Tuesday nights for married couples. And so they're kind of like in our stage of life, maybe you got a few kids leaving the nest, and they do awesome stuff. We talk about, I think you guys did a Francis Chan study, something like that. And so this is your accountability, belonging, and care. This is your support. This is Evan and Ashley. They are fantastic. They meet on Wednesday nights, and they have, really important, they have childcare. And so they've done a ton of stuff with us. We did, I said this, you heard that last semester together. And so this is the point. We have support here. We have help here as Northstar.Church. You don't have to feel like, hey, I'm married alone. I'll speak for all of my friends. I hope this is okay. We all need a little accountability and belonging and care, all right? We're all in this together. And so what I'd like to do is talk about, oh man, I forgot one important thing. Next week is Connection Sunday, okay? And we're going to have food trucks, and we're going to have water slides and all sorts of fun. And so if you want to come meet these folks today, that's great. They'll also probably be here next week for Connection Sunday, which is when you can get involved in a community group. And I'm going to ask something. Raise your hand if you're an introvert. All right, I'm talking to you, and I'm one of them. Next week, you'll be like, hey, let's not go to church. You know, let's skip. They're going to do that thing again where they're going to want you to talk to each other. It changed my life, okay? Changed my life, changed my marriage, changed my trajectory. God through that. So Don't skip next week. Come next week and find your friends, okay? Let me pray for us. Dear God in heaven, we say thank you so much for your kindness and your goodness, and Lord, for community and people that are willing to faithfully wound us, God. And we pray and say thank you so much for your Holy Spirit and the vision that you give us looking upward, the love that you have for us, God. You said that they'll know you're my disciples by the way you love each other, God. And I just pray that North Star is a place of that we're a place of love and hope, and people know, they go, you go to North Star, don't you? I can tell because you love each other. And we just pray that in Jesus' holy name. Amen. You guys have a great week.